Welcome back to our channel. Take a moment to subscribe and let's get started. First post by Barefoot Stallion. As a trucker, I usually have to rely 100% upon public restrooms, either they be in truck stops or in highway rest areas, when I need to take restroom breaks. To set the scene, I had stopped at a truck stop to take one of these much-needed bathroom breaks. It was one of the bigger chains, a chain which coincidentally had changed its billing from truck stop to travel center, in hopes of attracting more stops from the regular motoring public. Before all of this began, truck stops changing their billing, we truckers got to enjoy mostly respectable places. Nice restaurants, good selections of trucker gear, flashlights, tools, straps, chains and on, good old-fashioned hardware for truckers, and among the most important of all, nice and well-maintained clean restrooms. Ever since the motoring public became more ubiquitous in these stops, however, all of this started to change. Restaurants were replaced with fast food. Hardware was replaced by tourist crap and travel toys and junk electronics mostly for cars, and most of all, the state of the restrooms started going downhill. You get the picture, right? Our restrooms started looking just like restrooms from places like subway stations and bus terminals. Toilet paper all over the floors of the stalls, unflushed toilets, wads of wet paper towels left all over the sink counters, and most annoyingly of all, piss on many of the toilet seats. It was maddening. Because we truckers, you see, have kind of a loosely bound fraternity. Nothing quite so organized, but certainly a deeply ingrained respect for our fellow drivers. When we would use the facilities, we would always do our best to leave them clean for the next driver who came behind us. It was an unspoken respect which ran deep in our industry. Enter the motoring public though, and you get I don't give a damn teenagers, small kids leaving messes, too, and even adults who either thought it was funny, or who just plain didn't give a damn about whatever messes they left behind them. Well, here I was. I had picked up a load out of Los Angeles earlier that day, and I was already pretty miffed from all of the horrendous traffic I had been forced to deal with all day. And if anybody is familiar with I-15 coming north out of the LA area, they'll know that there isn't any place with decent facilities for truckers to stop at, until we get up close to Barstow, around 100 miles or so. So in addition to being already burned out from the day, the long drive without any stops had left me needing to go to the bathroom pretty badly. So I get parked, breathe a huge sigh of relief from being able to finally take a much-needed break and especially find relief at last, and then lock my truck up and hurry into the truck stop, making a beeline for the bathroom to finally get that much-needed relief. First toilet is clogged, a huge mass of nastiness in it. Sigh. The second stall, too, along with a huge mess of sodden and trampled toilet paper all over the floor around the toilet. One stall left, but there is someone in it. Sigh. I have to wait a few minutes more, so I just consign myself to waiting, kicking back against a sink counter to bide the time. When finally, this kid comes out of the stall. I say kid, but he was a teenager. Moreover, he was one of these long-haired punker types, complete with nose ring, ear piercings, and a death metal band t-shirt on. So the state of youth these days, I could personally care less. He's not my kid, and I just need to use the restroom. However, this kid gives me this nasty little smirk when he sees me waiting, then turns to head out of the restroom, not even stopping to wash his hands. I sigh and lean up from the counter and start for the just freed up stall. And what do I see? You guessed it. Huge amounts of very deeply yellow urine all over the toilet seat and all over the floor around the toilet. Hey! I shouted after the kid. He stops, turns, still wearing that little smirk, which turns even more smarmy as he turns, and he purrs out in an insulting tone, "What? You left piss all over this effing toilet." I snarled. And I did snarl. If anything, his smirk turned even more insulting, it evolving right into a nasty little slash of a grin under haughty, challenging eyes. Yeah. So what? He said, his voice an even more deeply insulting purr now. What are you going to do about it? And that is when his eyes widened, his nasty little smirk vanishing, the challenge in his eyes turning to uncertainty, followed immediately by outright fear. That is because I had started toward him with juggernaut-like directness and intent. He knew he was in trouble. He turned to try to bolt the hell out of there. However, his hand missed the handle to the exit door in his sudden panic, and he came face up against the door. Which is when I grabbed myself a whole fistful of punk boy long hair from the back, and hauled his haughty little butt back into the bathroom by it. "I am going to make you clean it," I informed him through clenched teeth, right next to his pierced ear. And then proceeded to frog march him back to the stall by his hair. The short of it is I did make him clean it. He pulled several paper towels from a nearby dispenser and cleaned the floor, then did the same with the toilet seat, with some wetted paper towels. All while I stood over him, a very unamused giant, my thickened arms, I did flatbed back then, so was immensely strong, folded across my chest, and my hard eyes never once wavering from his progress. When he was done, he stood between me and the toilet, his small hands clasped in front of him, his eyes down on his black tennis shoes. "Is this okay, sir? Is it okay if I go now?" In response, I gave a little snort of a grunt, let my arms fall relaxedly to my sides, and turned so he could proceed past me. Which he took as said permission and made a hasty scurry out of there. Best number 2 I had in years. Comments. First comment by Buttborker. I know for a fact, a few years back, I had a guy come into my old office. We sold reverse osmosis equipment, mainly for aquarium keepers but also for drinking water and specialty water filters, and was trying to concoct a machine/device that truckers could install in their cabs and urinate in. Obviously, pissing in bottles and ditching them on the road is both bad for the environment and disgusting, so something had to be done. He was trying to figure out a way to clean the PP and a method to evacuate the PP from the truck without the driver ever having to leave the road or cab. Apparently, there are a ton of regulations regarding pee being spilled along the veins of America, and here was picking my boss brain about chemicals and such, and I left in maternity leave, so I'm not sure how far he got into his endeavor. Reply from OP. Oh God, I completely agree. I have seen so many truckers just leave urine bottles all over truck stop parking lots. Or worse, in mall and other big store parking lots, leaving these places employees to have to pick the nastiness up. I too keep a pilot kit in my truck. There's not many truckers who don't. However, I use a glass jug. When I stop, I find some grass to go pour it out discreetly onto. Then I pour some Listerine into the bottle, shake it up good and pour it out, too. And before anyone becomes too judgmental about the use of something like this, take into consideration what we're doing and oftentimes have to do. Do you think you could drive 300+ miles without stopping to use the restroom? Well, very often, I have to. I am sometimes on schedules so tight, I might have time to take one rest break in a 600-mile run. If I stop any more, I risk being late, which could result in being written up. So I use my pilot kit to keep me from having to stop whenever the old bladder starts talking. It's just a reality of the business. What isn't part of this reality, though, and is completely unnecessary, is leaving the results of this out for someone else to have to clean up. Which brings me back to being respectable. Do what you have to do, but see to it that what you have to do doesn't impose on other people. Second post by Puzzled Poet 9313. I fully support making him clean the stall and teaching him a lesson for his vandalism and malicious shitty behavior. But I do not support physically assaulting a minor, or anyone for that matter. He'd be within his rights to charge you for assault for that. There are ways to be firm and even intimidate without physical assault, and if that fails, then that sucks and you inform management of the condition and of the kid if possible, but you move on and don't resort to illegally assaulting a kid. You both suck here in my opinion. The kid was massively entitled and a total brat, but you were an A2 and acted illegally. Good news is he won't be doing that again and hopefully stops being such an entitled brat. But it doesn't sound like you have plans to change your behavior to stop assaulting people that piss you off. Aware by current comments and definitely your attitude, I'll get downvoted here, but assaulting someone for any reason but defense is not okay. Reply from OP. Well, in my day, coming up, if you did something like this kid did, within the notice of an adult, you'd be extremely likely to get yourself grabbed by an ear and made to go do the thing I made this kid do. And trust me, I thought about it. But refrained because I didn't want to hurt him. As I said in my post, he had ear piercings. And grabbing his ear could have pulled one of them out. So I opted for his hair, instead. Either way, people such as yourself can sit back and armchair quarterback all you want, sitting and passing judgment all you want. But if you were in my situation, you might have done the same thing, if not worse. I am the way I am because of how I was brought up. Corporeal punishment was a very real thing. Spankings from our folks, and from teachers at school. And good ones, too, meant to wake kids up to what awaits them in the real world. Which is a thing that is sadly lacking in our current day and age. When I was that kid's age, I would have never considered challenging someone like that, for fear of what would happen to me if my folks found out. Moreover, I would have never done what that kid did in the first place, messing up that toilet stall the way he did. Because I was taught too much respect to not to. Either way, your opinion has been noted. I call farce on it, though. Because frankly, it is this kind of hands-off, liberal mentality which is causing these kinds of problems in the first place. And you can put that in your pipe and smoke it, or do whatever else you want to with it. And go on through life letting punk kids walk all over you and the people you love, as much as you like. I am simply not going to. Reply from Puzzled Poet 9313, nope, I would not have assaulted a kid however pissed off I was by their horrendous attitude and actions. I would only physically intervene if someone's safety was being threatened if I didn't. You don't need to be abused as a kid to know not to behave like this. Reality is vast majority of people would never be so immature and disrespectful as to do something like that on purpose and interact with you how they did. But AHS and brats exist and always have. I have never and would never have behaved like this, nor would my family or friends, and none of us had to be abused into submission. We were just raised to learn respect, manners, and compassion. A lot of people with the strictest or most abusive parents are the ones that act out like this. If you think I'm going to congratulate or praise you for altering your style of assault from ear to hair to avoid ripping out his earrings, then you're seriously mistaken. Your accounts of how great people turned out with physical punishment as kids really doesn't persuade me, since violence breeds violence, and that's clearly the case with you. Assaulting someone for doing something wrong is still assaulting someone. And illegal. But if you were in my situation, you might have done the same thing, if not worse. Your response here is just ridiculous. Do you really think people have no restraint, or that everyone even wants to go around assaulting people? The fact you think that's a normal reaction or way to think really is not selling me at all on how fantastic your upbringing is and how great physical punishment is. Just sets the example it's tolerable or even acceptable to take out your emotions and rage on people and lash out instead of learning how to actually process your emotions. That anger and feeling justified on taking it out or punishing people is a lot closer to acting out and doing inconsiderate things like the teenager did here. Claiming it's fine to go around illegally assaulting minors because that's how you grew up is just irrelevant. It might have set your expectations on what's acceptable but has zero bearing on the law or what is deemed acceptable now. There's also a lot of research showing how damaging physical punishment and abuse is. And good ones, too, meant to wake kids up to what awaits them in the real world. Beating kids up to tell them they'll get beaten up in the real world is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Teach people that's what's expected and the done thing, then that's what people do. If you don't teach people to be violent and assault everyone that needs a lesson or pissed you off, then that won't be what awaits them. Which is a thing that is sadly lacking in our current day and age. Are you really saying it's sad that kids aren't abused these days? If you teach kids it's morally acceptable to beat people up as punishment or regardless because that's what happens in the real world, then you're setting some dangerous sense of morality in them. That is unacceptable as society has moved on and accepted more basic human rights and realized how dangerous and damaging that is. Kids need to be taught morals and respect, and that's a lot easier if you show them what respect is by not beating them up and breeding hate, violence, and giving them such abusive upbringing they want to act out and punishment others the way they have been. Because I was taught too much respect to not to. You clearly weren't taught much respect for people if you think it's okay to assault them. And you definitely weren't taught to respect all people, even minors. Which isn't surprising with your accounts of how adults treated minors in your upbringing and how little respect you all had. Frankly, if you have to be assaulted into learning something isn't okay, you're being conditioned to act out of fear rather than developing a strong sense of morality yourself, and that is so much more fragile. Especially as those without power reclaim it and realize there is no one to punish them anymore, so regress, rather than building a true sense of morality with depth and complexity that becomes part of your core and is much more difficult to break. People who develop their sense of morality out of guidance and choice will only abandon it through desperation and necessity to survive and be safe. Those that develop it by oppression, punishment, and fear can abandon it as soon as they feel power or as a way to retain it and fight back against all those that contributed to the abuse, including a society that at one point supported it. It is often fickle and fuels hatred, obsessions with power, and all the negative behaviors and moral deficiencies that come with it. Most kids are taught respect would never dream of doing that. I don't know why you think you alone or those in your generation and upbringing alone are saintly and unique in having basic respect for others to not vandalize toilets intentionally and be an awe to people. Because frankly, it is this kind of hands-off, liberal mentality which is causing these kinds of problems in the first place. This is just complete BS. People have been AHS for years and violence and crime decrease when you give kids the respect of not abusing them. There's a hell of a lot of stats around showing how high the proportion of criminals were abused as a child. There's a lot more evidence to literally the opposite of your point. And go on through life letting punk kids walk all over you and the people you love, as much as you like. I am simply not going to. Frankly, I haven't had that much disrespect from punk kids as I treat them with respect. When people do act disrespectfully, I call them out on it and ensure there are consequences where I am able to and where appropriate. And that works just fine, thank you. I haven't had any big issue of kids walking all over me or people I love. You act as if this is the one and only way to stop people walking over you, which if that's the only way you're able to get through to people and get them to change their behavior and take responsibility, then you have a very limited range of tools in your belt clearly. Some of us get those results without being criminals ourselves and assaulting people and with self-control and respect. And you can put that in your pipe and smoke it, or do whatever else you want to with it. Thanks. What I am doing with this response is being really dismayed and concerned that you believe any of what you've written is okay or true, and you've convinced yourself of this narrative so much you think it's a positive thing and encourage violence and to become criminals and assault people, especially minors, and insult those who don't. I'm also taking a moment to be thankful I don't know you and don't tolerate and make space for people in my life that share your values, and that the majority of society has learned and used science and behavioral studies to work out what's acceptable and productive. It makes me appreciate I don't have child abusers and those advocating for it in my life, but it also makes me sad and scared to be confronted with the reality of people like you with such warped sense of what's acceptable good for people, and the idea that one day I could witness someone like you, apparently unable to control their violent urges when they feel disrespected or are pissed off. Both sad, extremely concerned about those you have influence over and the message you share, and thankful that's not how I do or will ever choose to live my life. I've done very well so far in my life at holding people accountable for their actions and teaching them a lesson, and haven't had to become an abusive criminal to do so. I'm grateful to have a good understanding of science, behavioral studies, psychology, and that I form my opinions and perspectives based on the evidence, tested facts and rationality. The more I meet people who spout their opinions in the face of evidence to the contrary and convince themselves of whatever narrative and beliefs they want to justify their behaviors, the more I take pride in my rationality and ability to shift my perspectives and opinions as I learn and am presented with reputable evidence or well-reasoned challenge. I know will never let myself to descend into such a closed and arrogant mindset. I really do respect people holding brats like this kid to account, and that you were prepared to do that. I really don't respect doing so through physically assaulting them. But I am honestly horrified by your responses, justifications, and attacks on others in your reply. Reply from OP: well, you have a pretty strong opinion about this, and I respect it. However, people just do things different ways. I saw this as an appropriate action and took it. I gave the kid a good scare, and left him with something he will remember for the rest of his life, and which also hopefully taught him something. On the other hand, if I had done as you suggest and just tried to reason with this kid, do you think he would have volunteered to come and gladly clean up his mess for me? Very doubtful. In fact, he would have been more likely to sneer even more, then walk out of the bathroom laughing at me. I didn't hurt him. In fact, I didn't even really pull his hair. I just held it hard enough to where he couldn't get away. It scared him pretty badly, which was my intent. On top of that, what might have happened had he run into a real asshole? Someone who would not have used the restraint I did. He might have gotten himself beaten to a pulp by this person. I used a scare tactic. I gave him a good fright, and with it, a good lesson in respect. I wasn't abused. I was disciplined. I got whacks from my parents, from my grandparents, and from my teachers. It ingrained into me a solid sense of respect. I've seen this named assault again and again, and along with it, accusations against me of advocating assault. To me, assault is trying to physically harm someone. The only way I might assault anyone is in my own defense. With this kid, I conveyed an object lesson. I would never say that trying to actually hurt someone is something that is acceptable. I agree. Doing this is not acceptable. I understand the whole counseling thing and trying to teach kids respect through caring and reason. But sometimes, or in the case of some people, they either had no access to it, or they were just too hard-headed to respond to it. With people like this, the only thing that is often understood is a firm hand and somebody who will not back down from them. I had no intention of taking it any further than I did. It got the kid's attention, and I hope he learned something from it, and I hope that he may have started becoming a better person for it. Or at the very least, stopped being destructive and doing things that negatively impacted other people. In the end, there is a big difference between assault and what I did. One is a nastily spirited thing, meant to do harm. What I did was in the spirit of attempting to do good.